Hey guys, so it's Friday, and normally you'd hear an episode of our Politics Roundtable called The Campaign Moment. Today, we've got something a little bit different here. But this was a big week for politics, so if you want to dive into those developments, we've got a new episode of The Campaign Moment out today. And that episode, it's only going to be available on our separate podcast feed, The Campaign Moment. So go into your podcast app, find The Campaign Moment, and get that episode queued up for your weekend listening. In the meantime, here on Post Reports, we're heading out to a basketball game.
All right. I am headed into Capital One, into the arena.
That's producer Sabby Robinson. Last month, she went to the Capital One Arena here in D.C. to talk with fans who were going to a WNBA game. The Washington Mystics were playing the Indiana Fever, a team that has a rookie player everyone's been talking about this year, Caitlin Clark.
I'm honestly just really excited to see Caitlin Clark. Ever since that WNBA has gotten really big, I've seen her on my For You page and whatever, and I'm just really excited to see her because every single clip I've seen is unbelievable. She just plays really well, and I'm so excited to see it in person.
That was fan Claire Van Buren. She's 21 years old and was attending her first WNBA game. Sabby spoke to so many people at this game who were excited to see Clark. In fact, so many people were expected to attend that the teams had to change venues from where the Mystics usually play. The game set a WNBA attendance record. DJ Dennis told Sabby he couldn't pass up the chance to see Clark play in person.
Are you following the sport because of Caitlin?
Just because she's the best, one of the best in the world. So if she's local, I'm pulling up. Yeah. She comes to DC, I'm coming every time.
Clark is the point guard on the Indiana Fever. She was just named the WNBA's Rookie of the Year. But before that, Clark played for the University of Iowa, where she was also a huge star. During her last season, she became the all-time leading scorer in all of college basketball, men's and women's. One of her final college games was the most-watched basketball game on ESPN ever. Clark has been drawing a lot of new fans to women's basketball, like Catherine Kloss. She came to the Mystics Fever game with her kids, Mark and Grace.
Have you guys been to games before?
Well, I have not, but they have. I have.
You have?
Yeah.
The only other game we've been to is to see Caitlin Clark.
Okay, so big Caitlin family.
Yes.
Do you watch her regularly? Will you guys watch her games at home?
Sometimes, not all the time, but
We watched all of her college games. We've been less, not seen as many professional games, but we've definitely seen them.
Okay, sports reporters, Ava, Kareem, we just heard those little kids. We heard people being like, I'm out here for Caitlin Clark. What's your reaction to what you just heard?
I did like hearing the little kids, because that's going and covering women's sports. It's fun to see people at the start of their fandom. And also, I'm an absolute sap. So I was like, oh, little baby sports fan. That's fun.
No, it's always super cool to kind of see those kids out there for the Caitlin games specifically. It's been building and building and building. And so it's kind of nice to kind of see that atmosphere of sometimes of things that you might only see at an NBA game.
From the newsroom of the Washington Post, this is Post Reports. I'm Elahe Izadi. It's Friday, October 4th. We're coming to the end of the WNBA playoffs. There are semifinal games on Sunday and Tuesday. So I wanted to talk about women's basketball today because even for those of us who haven't been paying close attention to every game, it's been almost impossible to not notice the hype. And a lot of that has been fueled by one player, Caitlin Clark. So today, I'm bringing in two sports writers who have been paying very close attention to break down the Caitlin Clark effect and what this means for the future of the sport. So first, we have Ava Wallace, a newsletter writer who reports on women's sports at The Post. Hi, Ava.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us is Kareem Copeland. This WNBA season, Kareem has been covering DC's team, the Washington Mystics. Kareem, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, you guys, the one name that keeps coming up over and over again whenever I hear about women's basketball is Caitlin Clark. Ava, can you first just remind us a little bit about who she is and why is there so much hype around her?
Sure. So Caitlin Clark was a player for the Iowa Hawkeyes women's basketball team, and she kind of started gathering a fan base in college, where Iowa was definitely a great program. Lisa Bluter, longtime coach there, but no one had really paid attention to them. They play in the Big Ten that much until Caitlin Clark started a really kind of scoring revolution akin to what Steph Curry did for the NBA, where everybody started chucking up logo threes like Steph Curry and just shooting from very far away from the basket and trying to kind of rack up these scoring numbers. That is actually a pretty apt comparison for Caitlin Clark and how much she scores, how she handles the ball, the assists that she racks up. So she started as a very popular women's college basketball player, stayed there all 4 years, and then became the number 1 draft pick, coincidentally, perfectly enough, for the Indiana Fever, very close by. So she is not only on court kind of leading. I don't know if it's a revolution, because it's not that her game is so different and nothing we've ever seen before, but we haven't seen a point guard with her court vision, with her scoring ability, with her leadership ability. And then we've certainly, not just in women's basketball, but really kind of across women's sports, we have not seen a figure like this maybe since Serena Williams. And even Serena Williams did not have the legions of loyal Caitlin Clark fans that follow her around to every single game. All of a sudden, Fever fans are selling out other teams' arenas. So it's really just this huge moment in women's basketball where the WNBA is dealing with an influx of new fans who maybe never paid attention to the WNBA before. Maybe they loved college basketball, but they're really Caitlin Clark fans.
So, Kareem, I know that you've attended a couple of games where Caitlin Clark has played. What is it like watching her play in person? What is it that makes her, I don't know, would you say singular right now as a player?
So it's funny, I've covered a lot of her games going back to her time at Iowa.
Oh, interesting.
Because I was still covering Maryland, the Maryland women, when she was a freshman. And it was funny, the other day I was talking to the Maryland coach, Brenda Friese's husband, and he was like, do you remember that game her freshman year at Maryland? It was kind of like post-pandemic times. Maryland had the best offense in the nation. They knocked down like 9 threes in the first half. It was a crazy Maryland game. And I went back and I looked up my story. I'm like, I wonder what I wrote about Caitlin that day. 2 sentences.
Wait, Kareem!
Freshman, but she scored 30. She was like, what? We were like, this Iowa freshman has scored 30.
She scored 30?
But no one was talking about her like that as a freshman. No.
So she wasn't on people's radar, even though she's been good since jump.
Yes. And Caitlin's game just kind of continually took off. And that's when everybody kind of said, oh my gosh, who's she? And like you said, the logo threes, the thing I pointed at a minute ago. Threes? The logo at the center of the court. Uh-huh. Most people shoot closer to the line. Steph Curry comes across half court and he can shoot that from there. Okay. So that's what it's kind of like, from standing on the logo, which is
very far away from the basket.
Very far away
so
from
basically,
the basket.
her and Steph Curry shoot from very far away from the basket, and that makes them remarkable.
You mentioned her vision. Her court vision is what's most impressive to me. The way she passes the ball and sees the game, 2 steps before other people. That's what's always most impressive to me. Every time I've watched her, there's been a moment in the game where she makes a pass that I've either never seen before, or just the way she's kind of sets up her teammates. So that's what's super impressive to me. But yeah, every game that especially since that freshman year, it's just loads and it's just grown and grown and grown. And Iowa fans, I never knew there were so many Iowa fans in the world.
Well, here they are. Well, let me ask this. I mean, we're talking so much about Caitlin Clark. I would be remiss not to ask about, just quickly, who are some other players who are really popular right now?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have?
Not very much time.
Okay,
Just give me some
not
names.
very much time. Okay, so
Asia Wilson, forward for the Las Vegas Aces. She just won her third MVP. She won unanimously this year. She's the lead player on the two-time defending champs that are going for a third. And she just got her big Nike deal. She's got a signature shoe coming up. She's got a new logo. And so Asia Wilson, of the veterans, especially this year, would probably be at the top of those lists.
And Angel Reese, of course, is kind of the other big newbie counterpart in the WNBA this year. She played for Kim Mulkey at LSU and is also just like this incredible personality and player. And she's kind of had this little rivalry with Caitlin Clark ever since they were in college. So that's one of them.
So lots of names.
Lots of popular names.
Lots of
Brittany
popular
Griner.
names.
Everybody in the world knows Brittany Griner these days.
Yes.
Right. She was the basketball player detained in Russia and then released 10 months later in this prisoner swap in 2022. But, even before Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese went to the WNBA, they played in the 2023-2024 college basketball season. I'm like, aren't they tired? They just played all this ball, and now they're going to play more ball. How was viewership during their college season compared to others? I'm wondering how much people were tuning into women's college basketball when they were playing.
That's been part of what the WNBA has been kind of talking about for years is, okay, as this viewership and this fanship grows from the college level, how do we make sure that bleeds in to them as professionals? Because in the past, there's a lot of people who follow you because, they like that college or whatever. They follow the college game, and then after that, it's done. And so they're trying to keep those same fans to kind of progress. And you've seen, I think, a lot of that, especially the last couple years. They're starting their own brands. So they have their own brands as sophomores, even freshmen sometimes. And so you've got all these followers and people who are paying attention to them for 4 years of college. And then all of a sudden, now they're in the pros. And I think in the last couple years, that has bled over more than I think we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, viewership is up kind of across women's college basketball, and you see that every year where we at the Washington Post, when we covered the Final Four, have noticed the past couple of years our coverage of the women's Final Four has outperformed. We've had more readers for that than we have for our coverage of the men's Final Four, which was certainly new to us. And then this year, the championship game, South Carolina beat Iowa for the title, set a viewership for women's basketball. Almost 19 million people watched it, peaked with 24 million viewers. That was ESPN's numbers. It was the most watched women's basketball game ever. It was huge. It was just, I mean, I think I came on Post Reports and talked about it then.
I hear you.
It's a big deal, which is how I measure, newsworthiness.
How much of this really does have to do with Caitlin Clark, though? Like what you described, Kareem, I'm wondering, Ava, how much that intense viewership or that uptick in viewership in women's college basketball has to do with Caitlin Clark?
It has a lot to do with Caitlin Clark. It has a lot to do with Angel Reese. It has a lot to do with kind of college basketball players who are exceptional college basketball players also becoming personalities in college sports. So women's college basketball players, you have to, right now the rules are you have to stay in college for at least 4 years. You can't, be a one and done like you can in men's college basketball. And what that means, where you're kind of now allowed to profit off your name, image and likeness, is that, one, you're seeing fan bases grow along with players. So you have 4 years to develop a relationship with a player, whether that's, a parasocial relationship or whatever. You're going to their games every day. Right, exactly. And then, so there's just so much more now that you're seeing people do brand partnerships. You're seeing people on television commercials so much more. So I think there is a little bit more people are familiar with the players that they're watching. But yeah, a lot of it is Caitlin Clark and just what she's able to do, and Angel Reese and what she's able to do.
I mean, Angel Reese is on billboards in Times Square when she's still in school.
Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
Meanwhile, I'm still in school, definitely not
I'm
on
like,
a billboard.
if you put me on a billboard, I would cry.
Like today. Yeah. But I also wonder how much of this also has to do with a bigger backdrop of just more interest in women's sports overall. Like, it felt like during the Olympics this year, I felt that, like, so much attention on the Team USA women's basketball team. Like, it wasn't just about, like, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. It was just, like, women's sports seems to be more popular now than ever.
That's why I want to give Caitlin and Angel their due, but it's not a solitary factor. The overall interest in women's sports, period, interest in the WNBA, I think there's just so many factors that, I don't want to, just say, hey, it's all about Caitlin, it's all about Angel, because there's so many kind of factors all coming in. There's more money being invested in it. There's more, quite frankly, different publications and people paying attention and investing in covering the league and investing in covering women's sports in general. So it's kind of a perfect storm of all of these things coming together. And then you have a transcendent player come through that is doing something that people haven't seen before, who's playing the game in a different way than people are used to. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of wants to. It's almost a word of mouth thing also. Everybody's talking about Caitlin. Yo, I need to go see too.
Right.
And then you go see her and she does something that you've never seen before. And then you want to keep following.
So we talked about college basketball, women's college basketball, more and more people watching it this year. What about the WNBA? Has that translated? Has that bet sort of, or the expectation by the WNBA that they would have more people watching, has that come to fruition? Kareem, what do we know about that?
So we just got the numbers not too long ago. That they just set the all-time record with 54 million unique viewers this year. 22 games averaged over 1 million viewers. 170% increase on ESPN. It's increase from last year, yes. Attendance highest in 22 years, up 48%.
Oh my gosh. This is crazy. All these numbers are like
they're breaking right. There's
highest
more
in 22
interest.
years. The league is 28 years old. What were they doing 6 years into the league?
Yeah,
that was driving.
What?
I'm like, wait a second.
question.
Well, it's kind of interesting also because a lot of these numbers will kind of harken back to those days. Well, there was a lot of interest in those days because it was brand new. The league had just started, and I think there was a lot of people who wanted to see what was up and see about the league. And then I think there was a time where that newness wore off and kind of people drifted away a little bit.
Yeah, and this is also something I love what Kareem said about it. Was just like a total confluence of events all happening at the same time. Perfect kind of storm. The WNBA has, I would say, seen a pretty intense growth in interest since right around the pandemic, honestly. And the WNBA is a league that's always had this kind of core debate within itself. Are we a cause or are we a sports league? Like
are we a cause or a business?
Yes, pretty much. And but it is a league that's, heavily populated by Black women, heavily populated by Black queer women. So these are athletes who have social conscious most of the time. And the WNBA for a very long time was really beating the drum for be interested in women's sports, watch us, respect us, pay us. And I honestly think around the time we were seeing a lot of athlete participation in marches after George Floyd and during the pandemic and kind of that time during the NBA and WNBA bubble. The WNBA played that season. They also went to a bubble in Florida. And I think it was kind of society and sports viewers catching up and saying, this is actually what I'm ready for now. And this is what I'm craving from the professional athletes that I watch. So I do really think it's been building sense around 2020, interest in caring about the league, investing in these athletes. And it just it was like, bam, and here you go.
Yeah.
Here's two young, perfect, fascinating athletes to latch onto if you've been really kind of looking for a way to get in, if you've been hearing about this league in the background.
Ava, though, I also understand there's sort of a dark side to all this increased attention on the WNBA. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that's happening, exactly as you said, on the flip side of all the new growth and attention and what a lot of people are kind of terming growing pains, which is something you hear about the WNBA a lot since it is still a very young league. But this year in particular, a lot of players kind of all season since there's been a new influx of a really intense amount of new fans to the WNBA who maybe didn't pay attention to the league before, who have come in with Caitlin Clark. And a lot of other players around the league, a lot of Black players in particular around the league, are saying that they're receiving a level of an intensity of online and in-person harassment that they have never experienced before. And I'm talking about veterans who said, in my 10 years of being in this league, 11 years of being in this league, I've never faced anything like this. So you have players who are facing kind of this racist harassment, this feels very political at times, and a lot of players and a lot of people are attributing it to Caitlin Clark fans. And Caitlin Clark, of course, is white. which is, of course, really tricky because Caitlin Clark herself has come out multiple times and said, don't use my name. You know, if you're a fan of mine, don't use my name to spread hate. Keep me out of this. I have nothing to do with this. Again, it's not her. It's not anything she's engendering, anything like that. But it is kind of, it brings up two separate debates, one of which is like, if you're the WNBA and you really want this growth, and that's what you've been working for years and years and years, okay, once you get it, it's kind of like, at what cost?
Is this kind of toxic fandom the majority of what it feels like to be at a WNBA game right now? Like, is it an anomaly?
It is definitely an anomaly this year. I mean, every single WNBA game I've ever been to feels like the most welcoming place. And women's sports in general feels like a really welcoming environment. It's a lot of families, it's young kids, it's a lot of people who are queer, and the atmosphere is very family friendly. And players are saying that is changing too. You've had a lot of kind of articles come out describing a really harsh environment. Teams have increased security during the playoffs because of players that say they're facing harassment. It is definitely different this season, but I can't say that is like happening at the majority of WNBA games I've attended. I'm also not a player who's like looking at my DMs after games and is experiencing this personally. So it
might
tricky.
Just be such like a big contrast from before.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a pause here. And after the break, I want to talk about the money. You know, women's basketball is more popular than ever, but are the players cashing in? We'll be right back. You know, we've been talking about attendance and viewership, but I want to know if this is translating into more money. But before we get into what's happening with the money right now, I think it's helpful to try to understand just how does the WNBA make its money? What are the pots or the streams that money come from?
So media rights deal is the big thing. And that's how the games get broadcast. And so ESPN or ABC or Disney ultimately pays the league so much to have their package of games and to show them on different networks. You also have your marketing brand partnerships. They've had essentially kind of a fundraiser where people kind of kicked in more money into the league. They're still associated with the NBA, so there's still some money kind of leaking in from over there. So all of these different frames are kind of where the money ultimately comes from. Ticket sales, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
merchandise.
So that's how the WNBA makes money. I'm curious about the media rights piece of it because it is such a big piece of that pie. How much are they making from that? Do you know?
So they just signed a new media rights deal that will now pay them $2.2 billion.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B over 11 years, and which is an enormous increase of what they were previously.
Ava, I'm wondering when you hear that figure, does that track for you as to what the league is worth?
Yeah, and I'm glad you phrased it that way because the internal crisis that the WNBA has always had and what you need to have to be able to expand and to pay players is you need to make money. And for a very long time, the WNBA has not made money, has not been a profitable league. It's very young. That's not I think that's something we harp on a lot. But this league is less than 30 years old. That's not exactly surprising. But so the media rights deal, that $2.2 billion, are going to be huge for that. And it was a big reason of why the WNBA is going to have 3 new teams over the next couple of years. They're expanding from 12 teams to 15 teams. But also it is a signal of what the league is worth and the valuation of the league and how much people are interested in women's basketball, women's sports, kind of all of that stuff. So it definitely all tracks for me. And was a huge win. This league brought in a new commissioner a handful of years ago, Kathy Engelbert. She came over. She was lead executive at Deloitte, and she was brought in as a businesswoman, and she had one job, and it was to get the league to make money. So,
they're making some money.
They're making some money, yeah.
I am wondering how the increase in fortunes for the WNBA will or will not translate into more pay for players, because I know it's been this ongoing debate just generally in sports, that women athletes are paid less than male athletes. So will this money mean more money for the players?
The percentage will certainly go up. So now you've got all this more money in the coffers that the league has to, can figure out what they want to do with now. But just like, any major company that works with their workers that have a union, and there's a collective bargaining agreement between the two to say, okay, this is how much vacation time you get. This is how, that lays out all of the details of the business worker relationship. And so with this new money in, the players are going to opt out of their deal, of their collective bargaining agreement that was supposed to be up in a couple years, but they're going to opt out this year. Everybody's expecting it to. It hasn't happened yet, but it'll be a shock if they don't. And so then they can go back to the league and negotiate all new salary structures.
Because there's more money for them to be making.
Benefits, all of those things. Because now the league can't say, well, we're only working with this much money. We know you just got a whole lot more new money. So everybody's expecting the pay structure to go up, more benefits, more child care, all the things. And so players have been looking forward to this, knowing this is coming for several years now. And so they've structured their contracts where basically over 100 players are going to be free agents, very specifically because they know the pay structure is about to change. And so everybody's gearing up for 2026 because that's when the new deal will kick in, and that's when everybody will be able to sign a new contract for more money than they could previously.
Ava, as you think about that in this moment, in the not too distant future, of potentially these, well, also like these WNBA players could be making way more money than they are now. What would that mean for women in sports overall?
It would be huge. I think the WNBA is one of those leagues that kind of sets an example for other domestic women's sports leagues, is a standard bearer, I guess, for women's sports in this country, certainly. That is a really big deal. And I think it's going to take a very long time for women athletes to be paid as much as male athletes in their equivalent sport. But you're going to see a lot more opportunity. And that's been something that the WNBA has struggled with for a long time, is there is so much talent in women's college basketball. And there were 12 WNBA teams.
Yeah.
You were seeing, college champions who were getting cut after going through the draft process and stuff and saying, like, sorry, you're not good enough. Because, we've got veterans who are experienced and have more muscle and know what to do. But, there are a lot of really good college basketball stars who were not on WNBA teams. And that was hurting the league because those players had fans too. So it's going to be a really big deal.
So I'm like thinking to a not too distant future where, okay, maybe there's more teams and maybe there's going to be more than one Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese that we're talking about in a couple of years because there's just more opportunity.
Absolutely. And even better, they're going to be spread out across the country, which is exactly what a healthy sports league wants, right? You want the kind of cross country. Okay, we got the New York market. We got the San Francisco market. San Francisco's coming as a team in 2025. That's a healthy sports league.
And it makes me think of like those little kids we heard at the top of the conversation and like when they're like not just 3, 4, 5 years old, what is it going to look like when they're 10, 11, 12?
Players say it all the time. If you see it, you can be it. That's the example. As there's more teams in this league, as there's more attention on the league, there's, kids sitting at home who, quite frankly, have never seen someone who looks like them, play at that level or be successful at that level. And they're like, oh, she looks like me. And so you see that trickle down into the audience and into little kids who, I've heard them saying, I'm outside with my brothers playing now, and they never would have otherwise. And they're shooting long jumpers, yelling, everybody used to say, from the logo, people used to yell, Kobe, now there's like kids yelling out, Caitlin Clark, kind of a thing.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I'm excited to watch the rest of the playoffs.
They've been really good. They've been really fun. First round playoff series, you usually can be like, I'll catch them in the second round. I was like, I can't look away from these games.
They were good games, and there'll be more for sure.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you, Ava, and thank you, Kareem.
Thank you so
for
much.
Having us.
Kareem Copeland covers basketball for The Post. Ava Wallace is a sports reporter who also authors the Sports Moment newsletter. You can subscribe to the Sports Moment by following the link in our show notes. That's it for Post Reports. Thanks for listening. Today's show was produced by Sabby Robinson. It was edited by Rena Flores, and it was mixed by Sean Carter. Thanks to Mark Seelig. Have a great weekend. And remember, if you love our show, help other people discover it by leaving a rating on Spotify or a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Our team also includes Maggie Penman, Ted Muldoon, Monica Campbell, Lucy Perkins, Alana Gordon, Ariel Plotnick, Bishop Sand, Rennie Stronovsky, Laura Benshoff, Emma Talkoff, Peter Bresnan, Allison Michaels, and Renita Jablonski. I'm Elahe Izadi. My co-host is Martine Powers. We'll be back Monday with more stories from the Washington Post.